Hello people of the internet, welcome back. In this video I'm going to be talking about tips for fitting in when you're a bit weird. I struggle a bit with fitting in, but I feel like I'm a good person to ask this. If you don't know already, I am both profoundly deaf and on the autistic spectrum. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome when I was 10. Now, like Asperger's syndrome, they've changed the diagnosis thing. So now if I were to be diagnosed, I'd just be diagnosed with autistic spectrum disorder. But at the time, that's what the diagnosis was. So I'm just telling you. It's been a while. I haven't made a video in over 2 weeks. I'm fine, in case anyone was wondering. I'm fine. I'm still alive. I've just been really busy. So let's get into it. My first tip is to try and look normal. And this also includes smelling normal. Basically, it's not the most like PC thing to say, but pretty privilege, what they call it, is real. And I can get away with a lot more awkwardness and weirdness looking like I do than if I looked like Jim from Friday night dinner. Just bear that in mind. Obviously, don't sacrifice things that are important to you. If you love a particular style and that makes you happy, obviously do that. But if you don't care and you're just wearing whatever, try and make sure you look normal, socially acceptable. When I was younger, I would always wear boys jeans, and I had this orange hoodie that was like way too big for me, but it was super like soft and comfy. So I would wear these like boys jeans, a purple t-shirt, and this massive orange hoodie. Orange is not really my colour, but well, at least this shade of orange wasn't. I looked so bad and I looked so weird. And this was in like 2013, like when it was all skinny jeans were in, I looked weird, and I could have worn something that looked normal that served the same. Just bear that in mind. If you don't care about fashion, try and just look normal. Obviously, be comfortable. I'm not saying you need to go out looking like a Barbie doll every single day with a full face of makeup and high heels. You don't have to go crazy with it. Just normal. That's what you're aiming for. Point number 2 is to act confident in your own skin and act like comfortable, because oftentimes there's nothing worse than looking at someone who just looks like pained and super uncomfortable and they just don't know what they're doing with their body, sort of thing. I have a bit of a tendency to look like that and just try to just act confident. Fake confidence looks a lot like real confidence, so just go with it. Be aware you might look a bit odd, but you'll look odd if you're trying not to look odd as well. And it's a better kind of odd if you're just a confident eccentric rather than painfully inept. I feel like that's better. If you act weird but confidently, people kind of go with it a bit more. I know that's super unfortunate. I don't know. It sounds super bad, but it's true. Next tip is to have some sort of general knowledge. Try and know who famous people are and current events. I'm not great at this, but it does help. A lot of time people will start talking about a famous person and I have no idea who they are. And it's just, people are like, what, really? You don't know that person? And I'm kind of like, no. So if you basically just, I don't know, Google a list of top 10 songs, top 10 charts, whatever, and just look at the names of the artists and Google them. That will do a whole lot. Read a bit of the news, try and have a vague idea what's going on so you don't look like you're an alien that's come from another planet and doesn't know anything about planet Earth, which might be true, but like you can fake it. You can learn this stuff. So do that. Tip number 4 is don't be arrogant, or if you are arrogant, just hide it well. I feel like a lot with especially people on the autistic spectrum tend to have this kind of arrogant air about them. And I'm like just as guilty as this as anyone else. I think I'm better now, but when I was younger, because a lot of the time, if you are on the autistic spectrum, you will have some things that you are incredibly unusually good at and very specific knowledge that not a lot of people have, especially when you're a child and it's atypical of your age. When you're an adult, I think it's more, things even themselves out when you're an adult. You don't end up looking super smart as an adult as much. But when I was a child, I have a very, very good memory of not of like what I'm supposed to be doing day to day. I'm actually terrible, but like random facts I'm very, very good at. I'll just remember them. So oftentimes someone will ask a question. The other day I was in a class and it was like, oh, what was the main export of Bolivia? And I knew that it was lithium. What's the most important natural resource in Bolivia? And I said lithium, which is correct. And everyone was like, how do you know that? Thinking I'm really clever, but it's just because I remembered it from someone told me ages ago. That doesn't mean you're incredibly smart. That just means you have a good memory, or you're like, it's one thing. And it's often easy to see other people as lesser than you, like seeing yourself as this misunderstood genius and everyone else is just shallow and they only care about Dua Lipa's next album, when that's not really true. I know it might seem like that, and do people have nothing else to talk about than the weather and whatever? And a lot of time when you see people's conversations and you like listen into other people's conversations, not that I can really do much of that, but they'll often be talking about things that seem super pointless and surface level. You don't like, most people won't walk up to another person and just start talking about seahorse taxonomy. That's, even though that might to you seem like it's much more of a clever thing to be talking about and much more interesting to talk about than what you did at the weekend, that doesn't mean that other people don't know anything other than what they did at the weekend. It's just those are the things that people choose to talk about in our society as a way of socially mixing, because they are very general, and most people, like everyone can talk about what they did last weekend usually, and there's probably exceptions unless they were in a coma or something, I don't know, but most people can talk about what they did last weekend. So it's a very easy thing for them to go in and start talking about that, rather than if you go up to a random person and start talking about a very specific topic, like exports from Bolivia or seahorse taxonomy or snake dentition. Those other people might not know about that. And while I love when people come up to me and start talking about something that I have no clue about, because then I can ask them questions and I can learn about it. But a lot of people prefer not to do that because it makes them, I don't know, it makes them feel like they're not contributing, because they can only learn, they can't contribute anything to that conversation. So I think that's my theory on why people talk about such seemingly stupid topics. It doesn't mean you're better than them, and it doesn't mean you're smarter than them. My next point is to study social skills. Like literally go online, buy a book. You can literally buy books about social skills. Go online, Google things, Google like etiquette lessons, Google like how to be a better conversationalist. Just, you know, Google it, get tips, take notes, remember them, study it, go into every time you go into a social situation, after you leave, think like, oh, how did I handle that? Was I using these tips that I learned? And, you know, genuinely try and pick up that skill, because they are skills that you can learn. Oftentimes, you might feel a bit like you can't really pick up those social skills as well as other people, which might be true, but it doesn't mean you can't make progress. For example, if you're useless at a sport, naturally you just have no talent for it, versus someone else who naturally does have talent. When you first start out, they're going to be a lot better than you. And that's true. And then if you both put the same amount of effort into that sport, they're still probably going to be better, but you're going to be better than you were before. So you'll be, as someone who's naturally useless that's really tried, you're going to be a lot better than someone who's really useless and hasn't tried. You can get, I'm not saying you can get from being completely useless to like world class, because you can't. In most cases, maybe you can. I mean, you can definitely, with a reasonable amount of effort, go from useless to pretty okay. That's what we're aiming for. Pretty, you can have average levels of social skills. Not everyone else has this secret key where they're like, they know exactly how to handle any situation. That's just not how it works. My next tip is sometimes you're not the weird one. Sometimes other people are weird and you might not know how to handle that situation, and a lot of people wouldn't know how to handle that situation. If some guy comes up to you and tries to hug you and you don't know them or something, that's a weird situation. And I feel like it's pretty normal not to know quite how to handle that. Or someone is really, really drunk and makes inappropriate comments or something. It's very difficult to handle those situations for anyone. So try and remember that a lot of times it can feel like, especially if you've been diagnosed with something like autistic spectrum disorder, you can feel like you're in every situation, social situation that goes wrong, it's like all your fault, basically. It can feel like, oh, well, I must have done something wrong. But sometimes you haven't. Sometimes other people are the weird one. Next point is to learn to laugh at yourself and not take yourself too seriously. Sometimes you're going to mess up and you're going to say something weird and other people are going to give you funny looks. And if you can just be like, I don't know why I said that, and laugh, that's a lot less awkward than if you then are super embarrassed and don't speak to anyone else for the rest of the day, or, you know, just leave. It's much better if you just laugh it off. And I know it can feel really like, it feels awful, like when you really mess up in a social situation and other people start giving you weird looks and you just feel like you've done something wrong or you've really upset someone. That feels awful, but at least try and recover the situation as best as you can, ideally by using kind of humour and laughing at yourself and being a bit like, I'm really, like, I don't know why I said that, like, I'm socially awkward. You just have to, like, sorry. And that's a lot better than not even trying to recover the situation and just leaving, or being like, just forget it, move on, try and get over it. Try not to take yourself too seriously. Next point is be self-aware. If you've got to be self-aware of the fact that your social skills might not be as good as other people's and you might struggle. It's much better if you can admit that and have, like, other people can, if you go up to people and say, I'm really socially awkward, so if I say something a bit weird, just don't mind me. And you make it clear that you are aware of that fact. It makes it a lot easier for other people than if you don't have a clue that you're socially awkward and you keep doing these things and you think you're doing a great job and you don't understand why other people find you weird, and you don't. Just try and be aware of that fact. That doesn't mean you are useless and you'll never ever be able to have a good social relationship or whatever, but just have a bit of self-awareness. It never goes amiss. My next tip, find friends who can accept your quirks and stuff. You don't want to be involved if you're a bit socially awkward or on the autistic spectrum or deaf, and being deaf, you know, really does affect like how your social skills, because you can't judge the situation as well. Make friends with people that get you. This is a lot easier when you're older. I know this isn't helpful if you're like a kid, because you can't just make yourself older instantly. You have to wait. But I promise it does get easier as you get older and other people get more mature, because they'll be more aware of the fact that you struggle, rather than kids won't necessarily be understanding of that. But don't make friends with the mean girls. You know, don't make friends with Regina George. You want to have friends that aren't going to judge you for your mistakes and will just take you as you are. And there are people out there that will. There are people out there that will. You can't be that weird. Unless you're like a serial killer or something, like, then you're going to struggle, but that's kind of on you at that point. That's on you. That's not, I can't help you with that. If you're like a genuinely awful person, then you're going to struggle. But if you're a pretty decent person, you can find friends that won't judge you. And my last tip is to be honest with other people. Admit the fact. Tell people when you meet them, just so you know, I'm deaf, I'm a bit socially awkward. So if you ask a question and my answer either is I'm answering the wrong question. The other day, both of these things, the other day someone asked me, what halls are you in? And I answered modern languages because I thought they'd asked what course you on, which, you know, it's super embarrassing, but, you know, if people understand why, they can get over it. But you just have to say, like, don't try and hide, especially if you're deaf. You can't hide that, people. You can't hide that. They're gonna realise. So yeah, try and just be upfront about it, and try not to be too embarrassed of it. Don't make it something that everyone is scared to mention, or try not to make it something that people are uncomfortable around. If you're comfortable and upfront, they'll be comfortable and upfront. I'm very honest and open about the fact that I'm deaf, and I'm not less open about the fact that I'm autistic because there is more of a stereotype that goes along with that. I just say that I'm a bit socially awkward, and I'm quite upfront about the fact that I'm deaf. And people are quite comfortable with it. Like a lot of people will be very comfortable asking, like, oh, what can you hear? Or can you hear this? Or how is this for you? People feel a bit more comfortable asking that than if I were trying to hide it and make people feel like they can't ask. So those are my tips. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully it won't be another 15 days until I make a video next time. Thank you for watching. Bye!